Hey, it's Karen. Welcome to this episode of A Touch of Genius, your place to get curious about your personal ingenuity and develop your potential. Together, we're going to discover how to break down and break through limitations so we can shine brighter. We'll find out how this helps us create a better life experience wherever we are and explore its far-reaching implications. We'll also be learning more about how someone else's touch of genius impacts us. Get your notebook and cookies ready, and let's dive into this episode. Hello Genius, and welcome back. What happens if your own physical energy is blocking your personal development, and how do you change that? Today we're going to get a bit scientific as we explore genius from a physics perspective. This is part 1 of a mini-series dedicated to energy and how this impacts our human potential. So we'll be looking at energy from different angles. Today we'll look into some of the connections between the smallest unit of matter known to us and our physical bodies themselves, and how this impacts our thoughts and behaviors in a constant feedback cycle. Everything is connected, right down to an atomic level. So, what does an atom have to do with you living at your highest potential? An atom is the smallest unit of matter that retains all of the chemical properties of an element. It's a tiny particle that consists of 3 main parts: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons are found in the nucleus, or center, of the atom, while electrons orbit around the nucleus. The nucleus is positively charged because of the protons, which have a positive charge. Neutrons have no charge, hence neutral, and they help stabilize the nucleus. Electrons are negatively charged. The number of electrons in an atom is equal to the number of protons, and this number will determine the chemical properties of an element. Atoms can gain or lose electrons to form ions, which are atoms that have a positive or negative charge. Which means we are either positively charged or negatively charged at an atomic level. 99% of our body is made up of atoms of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. These particles make up only a small portion of our mass, so if our mass doesn't come from these particles, where does it come from? It comes from energy. Scientists believe that most of our body's mass comes from the kinetic energy of those particles. Kinetic relates to motion. Most of the cells in our body regenerate every 7 to 15 years, and many of the particles that make up those cells have actually existed for millions of years. Which is why you often hear people like me say that we are made of stardust, because our carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen atoms were made in burning stars. Which means that our body is a small-scale set of radioactive particles, though not enough to cause us any harm. We emit radiation because of a lot of what we eat, drink, and breathe contains something called radionuclides. These are incorporated into our molecules and eventually decay and produce radiation in our body. It sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? When this decay happens, it releases a positron, which is the electron's antimatter twin. So we also contain a small amount of antimatter. But it's not long before those positrons bump into our electrons and obliterate into radiation in the form of gamma rays. Just so you know the difference, radiation is the energy or particles that are released during radioactive decay. The radioactivity of a material refers to the rate at which it emits radiation. It's interesting to mention that the frequency of gamma rays plays a crucial role in the human mind, particularly in the cognitive processes like working memory and attention. The 40 Hz frequency is a critical frequency for gamma brain activity, and techniques such as meditation or neurostimulation can actually increase the amplitude of gamma waves, leading to improved cognitive function. This is why you find a lot of meditation videos that are tuned to certain frequencies. Back to the positive and negative charge of these atoms. We just learned that atoms can gain or lose electrons to form ions. Ionization is a fundamental process in various biological systems, including enzyme function, muscle contraction, nerve conduction, and the regulation of hormones. These processes rely on the ability of ions to move across cell membranes, allowing for the transmission of electrical impulses and the regulation of chemical reactions. So, if there's some sort of imbalance in our ionization, then we will probably experience issues in any of those areas. Ionization also naturally occurs in our atmosphere. The Earth's ionosphere, which is an atmospheric layer, is located about 50 to 1,000 kilometers, or 30 to 600 miles, above sea level. The ionosphere influences radio propagation and affects GPS signals that travel through this layer. It depends primarily on the sun and plays an important role in atmospheric electricity. It forms the inner edge of the magnetosphere, which is a region of space surrounding an astronomical object, like a planet, a star, or a comet, in which charged particles are affected by that object's magnetic field. German mathematician and physicist Carl Friedrich Gauss proposed that an electrically conducting region of the atmosphere could account for variations of Earth's magnetic field. Some decades later, Italian inventor Marconi received the first transatlantic radio signal in 1901. This leads us to the electromagnetic fields, which are a combination of invisible electric and magnetic fields of force. They're generated by natural phenomena like the Earth's magnetic field and by human activities, mainly through the use of electricity. Power lines, mobile phones, and computers generate electromagnetic fields. I know this is a lot of information, but stick with me because all of these parts come together in terms of how they affect your physical well-being and how this in turn affects your pursuit of your highest potential. With the increase of electronic information in the past several decades, electromagnetic radiation, or EMR, has become a subject of concern. Different levels of radiation impact different areas of the brain, which then have an effect on memory, learning, mood, communication, and other physiological aspects such as metabolism. Thyroid issues, anyone? Neurotransmitters play critical roles in cognitive and emotional behavior. Exposure to electromagnetic fields can cause structural and functional changes in the nervous system. For example, alterations in the levels of specific neurotransmitters are related to various neurological disorders, including depression, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's. How many more instances have we seen of these specific health issues over the last several decades that run in parallel with the rise of wireless technology and all the related electronic devices that we're using? Referring back to gamma for a moment, in terms of early brain development, gamma activity is key to understanding the developmental aspects of mental disorders. Because electromagnetic radiation produces various electromagnetic waves of different frequencies, this results in a higher intensity in our living spaces. The high-frequency waves such as cosmic, gamma, and X-rays have enough energy to cause ionization. This is on top of the Earth's natural ionization process that we just talked about. So we have ions within us and around us with constant changes and positive or negative charge, and we also have the electromagnetic field. As if deciding what to wear today wasn't enough to deal with already, right? In the show notes you'll find various links to all of this research-based information which go into much more depth and explanation. There are many tunnels in the rabbit hole, but they're fascinating if this stuff interests you. Tunnel as deep and wide as you feel inspired to. Here, I'm trying to hone in on the essence to tie it all together and get you thinking about how all of this connects back to us and our human evolution. Radiation can be classified as either ionizing or non-ionizing. The different types of radiation are classed based on how much energy it has. Ionizing radiation is when radiation has enough energy to break an electron away from an atom in a process called ionization. Because ionizing radiation has enough energy to remove electrons from atoms, it can alter the chemical composition of the material that it interacts with. In living tissue, this process can damage DNA and it can result in the death or mutation of the impacted cell. Think of cancer. Larger doses of ionizing radiation can cause effects such as skin burns, radiation sickness, or worse. Let's talk about radiation sickness for a moment. Radiation sickness is caused by being exposed to a high dose of radiation. Radiation is the energy released from atoms as either a wave or a tiny particle of matter. By the way, if I repeat a few things, it's just so that you can make better connections between each part, because there's a lot of parts to this. So, radiation sickness happens when high-energy radiation damages or destroys certain cells in the body. The severity of radiation sickness symptoms depends on how much radiation you've absorbed. How much you absorb depends on the strength of the radiated energy, how long you're exposed to it, and the distance between you and the source of radiation. The severity of radiation sickness also varies based on how sensitive the affected tissue is. For example, the gastrointestinal system and bone marrow are both highly sensitive to radiation. If something goes wrong with our bone marrow, it can cause diseases such as leukemia, multiple myeloma, and anemia. And you might say, but we're not in a nuclear zone. But think of the cumulative effect of all the different technology that has been amped up over the years and the higher level of electromagnetic radiation that emits that is affecting us somehow. Let's also talk about radio wave sickness, also known as electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS. This is a condition where individuals typically report a range of non-specific health problems attributed to exposure to electromagnetic fields. The symptoms can vary in severity and may include headaches, dizziness, difficulty concentrating, memory loss, nausea, irritability, depression, anxiety, insomnia, tremors, fatigue, fever, and flu-like symptoms. Does any of this sound familiar to you? I'm asking for a friend. Once again, I'm not offering medical advice. I'm simply sharing information that I'm finding in connection with things that can impact our personal development and human potential. I'm literally following my own curiosity here and sharing it with you. So if you experience any symptoms such as the ones listed above, please consult with a health professional. End of disclaimer. Now think. Do you sleep with your phone next to you at night? How close do you sit to the router wherever you work from home or the office every day? How many devices do you have in your home at a given time? How many Wi-Fi towers have gone up in your town over the last few years, and how much more powerful are they? Let's take a break from the science now and just draw for a bit. Take a sheet of paper or a tablet and draw yourself in the middle of it. Then draw a line underneath you to symbolize the earth. Then draw a tree next to you, and then the sun. And now start drawing some arrows pointing down from the sun to you, and others pointing down to the tree, and others pointing down to the ground. Then draw some little arrows or squiggly lines going around within you, or your brain, and then draw some arrows coming back from you out into the rest of the world. All of these arrows symbolize those waves oscillating between you and the rest of your environment. You can draw little dots for atoms if you want, just for fun. Now sit back and take a long look at what you've drawn. If somebody had spoken to you about the atomic connection between us as human beings and these different physical or environmental aspects when you went to school, would it have made physics, chemistry, or biology class any more interesting for you? Would it have helped you feel a different relationship with the Earth and the universe? Remember, scientists have told us that we function based on kinetic energy, which is the movement of particles. So, we need some amount of electricity to function with. Think about it. When somebody's heart stops, what do paramedics use to revive them? They use a machine that discharges an electrical impulse to restart the heart, right? All of our neurotransmitters need electrical impulses to send information back and forth throughout our entire system. But what happens if we cut ourselves off from our connection to Earth's natural electrical flow? Once upon a time, humanity used to walk barefoot. Way before asphalted roads or cement were invented, before all of the electrical grid was built, and we had no need to somehow insulate ourselves from those potential electrical shocks or the scorching heat of asphalt in the summer. Then we started to use sandals built out of woven reed or rope. Then we evolved into wooden shoes or leather-soled shoes. Eventually, somebody created rubber soles. Now, let's talk about the earth beneath your feet. Electromagnetic radiation induces voltages in our bodies, which disrupt the trillions of electrical communications that are vital to the functioning of our body. By being grounded to the earth, we significantly reduce the levels of those induced voltages. Most shoes cut this connection because the rubber soles insulate us from the very essential electrical charge that we need. That's because the earth is a massive reservoir of free electrons. It's free energy. Without a connection to this reservoir, the cells in our body are unable to balance the charge of electron-deficient free radicals. This is in part what causes a lot of our health issues. Add to that all the tech we have, and those invisible forces have a deep impact on our well-being. So, our shoes block us from earthing ourselves, and our brains and bodies are overloaded by radiation that is far beyond our natural frequency to handle so much at once. Is it any wonder why people's brains literally short-circuit somehow? If your brain is short-circuiting, you can't think straight. If you can't think straight, you can't feel or function straight, can you? So we need to harmonize our inner circuitry. Have you ever been up in the mountains, at the beach, or experienced a thunderstorm and suddenly felt a huge change in your mood? That's not just a feeling of awe and wonder at nature's beauty or power. It might actually be negative ions that are floating in the atmosphere. Interestingly, it's because of their negative charge that we feel this way. Many researchers have proposed that being exposed to negative ions can have positive effects. Yes, it can seem quite counterintuitive when something that's called negative is actually positive for us. But let's look at it. Research supports that exposure to negative ions has positive effects on the body, such as on the nervous system by reducing stress on the body, the thyroid gland by affecting vitality and concentration, the respiratory system by preventing illnesses such as colds, asthma, and bronchitis, regulation of the heartbeat and blood pressure, lowering of histamine and allergen levels, or improving natural defense of the body and health of cells. If we don't have the right electrical charge within our bodies for our nervous system to function at its best, then this impacts our physical body, which can affect our mental and emotional states and our overall performance. It's hard to express your personal genius when you're not functioning well, isn't it? One of the best ways to balance yourself is to spend as much time in nature as possible, and barefoot whenever possible. It can feel a bit awkward, especially if you're used to years of walking around with shoes, but once you get used to it, you'll start to notice a difference in yourself. It also helps to stay present while you're doing so and making sure you do not have any electronic device in your pocket or on your wrist, so that it's just you and your connection to the earth. Even if it's just walking barefoot in your own garden, so that you can recharge yourself through the natural electricity of the earth itself. This is the most literal sense of the word grounding that you often hear in meditation circles. I've seen people do voltage tests of themselves with and without shoes standing on the grass, and the difference is fascinating. It's very well documented in the scientific world as well that earthing helps reduce inflammation, which is often the root of many illnesses such as Alzheimer's, cancer, and heart disease. There's a great documentary about this called The Earthing Movie, The Remarkable Science of Grounding. You'll find a link to it in this episode's show notes. Many people around the world live in cement blocks, though, with little or no natural elements like trees or grass to balance things out. So what do you do if you're living in a concrete jungle, surrounded by electronic devices and electromagnetic radiation? If you don't have easy access to nature or green areas around you, there are other natural resources available to help counter this sort of electromagnetic radiation. You can look into the energetic qualities of crystals like quartz, shungite, or black tourmaline. All of these have different qualities that help protect against the energy of the electromagnetic fields that these devices emit. Crystals come from the earth, after all. Quartz, for example, creates its own electrical current. Why do you think they use it in old-school wristwatches? There are plenty more such crystals that you can also use for other things like balancing energy in your body. I've worked a fair amount with them over the years on myself and with people during coaching and energy healing sessions. It's amazing what a little stone can do when it comes to a person's emotional and physical blockages. There are also companies and individuals who have developed some pretty cool accessories to help us obtain that same energetic effect. Bedsheets, blankets, shoes, mouse mats. You'll find additional resources in the show notes. Please note, I'm not affiliated with any of these companies, although I do support what they're doing, especially because they've got hard evidence to back up the positive impact of their products. This week's episode doesn't have a specific featured genius, but I would like to give a shout out to the people who created The Earthing Movie, Sundance award-winning filmmakers Josh and Rebecca Tickle, grounding pioneer Clint Ober, and the other people who have created accessories to help us all recalibrate ourselves. These people are my geniuses of choice for today. People who have discovered the importance of reconnecting with the earth and creating things to help others who may not have that immediate access to nature, or who want to supplement it because of all the technology that we can't really get away from anymore, since there's just so much of it. Some of these people have done this because they themselves discovered through their own health issues that what they were missing was this electrical balance within themselves. To you, creators, I dedicate this episode, and I thank you. This is where pure genius lives, in the following of one's curiosity and the discovery of things that can help you and can also help other people feel, be, and do better. And as for you, my dear listener, I hope this episode has helped you understand your connection with this earth at a simple atomic level, how this has an effect on your brain and body, and how you can literally start taking your power back. My mission today has been to shed light on some energetic aspects in which you can make subtle shifts to recalibrate your wonderful nervous system, literally from the ground up, to improve your inner circuitry for optimal performance. We've connected the dots between atoms in our bodies and the atmosphere, electrical charge within our cells and the earth, and how electromagnetic radiation can impact our brain functions. In the next part of this energy series, we'll be looking at a less scientific but just as powerful aspect of energy that impacts our personal ingenuity. I'll see you there. As we wrap up today's show, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. It means a lot to me. You see, whenever we create something, we always take a leap of faith into the unknown, and we don't always know how it'll work out. That's part of what this podcast is about, encouraging all of us to take leaps of faith on our ideas, dreams, and creations, and having a safe space to explore them, to build the strength to get back up when we fall, and to celebrate when we fly high. I'd love to know what your big takeaway is from this episode. Tell me what you're working through and what you'd like to know more about. Also, is there someone you'd like me to interview on the topic of genius? Let me know. Email me at hello@karenpinter.com or message me on my socials. In the meantime, take care of your genius self.